Hello, welcome to Billy Ho Sports. And this week we're going to preview the Arlington Million that has now been moved over to Colonial Downs. Ran last year at Churchill. Since Arlington racetrack closed, it went to Churchill. Churchill lobbied to have it moved to Colonial, which I think is a great idea. Keep it home. So Colonial Downs is what we're looking at. And we have a few high-level stakes races this weekend, and I am going to cover most of all of them. So basically, here at Colonial Downs, we'll also have the Beverly D and the Secretariat in a later video. In addition to that, we're going back over to Toga. Obviously, we got the 4-star Dave and Saratoga specials at the spa on the agenda as well. And then we look out west to Del Mar for a couple of them called the Yellow Ribbon and the Sorrento Stakes. I think I'll cover them in like a betting strategy show, but I might do more of a preview on the Beverly D Secretariat and maybe even 4-star Dave and Saratoga special. So be on the lookout for that. Set your notification bells and all that good stuff. So please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. If you have, I so much appreciate it. Smash that like button, leave a comment, and let's get started. Okay, the Arlington Million, hence the name. It's worth $1 million. 1.25 miles on the turf. And so we are going to start off with Mark Cassie trained Strong Quality, who ran 5th in the Grade 1 Manhattan Stakes, which we're going to watch. And this one goes right out to the lead. He's the number 2 horse, I think. And he sets the pace throughout a 47.74 half mile. Then he carries the lead all the way around into the stretch, looking pretty good until this 8 horse On the Mark. And I'll mention this one again. On the Mark, really quality turf horse. So he just finds another gear and flies right by him. And then he's passed by 2 other rivals at the finish. But not a bad looking race at all for his first time in a big stakes race. Went right to a Grade 1 Manhattan. So he ran in other, lower level races like allowance and optional claimers and whatnot. So he basically ran, obviously, in the previous race that I talked about, he basically ran the same front end race and held for the win over lesser competition and a shorter distance. So I think that might be an issue, the distance, because 1.25 miles is the big difference between that and like a 16th. So if he's not holding it 1.125 miles like the Manhattan was, then it's going to be tough to go another 1/8 of a mile. So we'll keep an eye on that and see how that horse is looking, maybe post draws and whatnot, and see who's else to get into the race, because this is just a Contenders video, and there's only about 5 or 6 of them that are on the Contenders list. So there could be some that drop out and get added in, and I'll cover those in a betting strategy video. So Rock Emperor is trained by Chad Brown, so watch out, because Chad Brown just be throwing out turf stakes winners left and right. This one doesn't look the part at first glance, though. He was in the same race we just watched, that Manhattan. He finished 9th with a really troubled trip where he had to check up before the stretch and had 0 rally. So I think he might have been the number 7 horse in that race, but he was never really a factor, period. He'll also pop up in this 2022 Joe Hirsch stakes when I cover Adamo here in just a minute, who's Chad Brown's other horse. So bear with me there. But I wanted to show you this one. This is the horse I'd like to see Chad Brown bring. This is a year ago, Grade 2 Bowling Green Stakes, right here, or right at Saratoga, I should say, not here, but at Saratoga. And it's the number 6 horse with the big sweeping move around the turn and dialed in coming home. That's the kind of perfect turf trip stretch run that I like to see. I like to see those horses get outside of the group and get clear as they hit that stretch, and then turn on the afterburners. So closers, people that gain ground down the stretch and whatnot, more likely in my book to win these turf races than the front runners, but front runners still get it done. Don't get me wrong. Adamo, like I said, trained by Chad Brown, has not raced since this 2022 Joe Hirsch that we're looking at, where he ran sixth. He was the 3-horse in that race. And that, like I said, he tried to make his way through the inside only to get kind of trapped. But I appreciate it because this was a 1.5 mile race. So this is going to be a little bit longer than the one we're talking about. The inside position saving ground in a 1.5 mile race is wise. But what you need to do when you're getting toward the end of this race is obviously have some kind of exit strategy before hitting the stretch, or you run the risk like he did to have nowhere to go. And then by the time you get running room, you're not able to get the win. So being off for that long is a big strike in my book, but he's been breezing 5 furlongs at Saratoga for the last 2 months. So I have to think Chad Brown will have him ready. This one I kind of like. This is a coming from overseas, Master of the Seas, trained by Charlie Appleby, and looks to be one of the favorites, most likely. Recently won this grade 2 summer mile across the pond at Ascot. And he is the number 1 horse. And I apologize for the quality of the video. And I really like it better when they have the horses' names matched with the numbers. But he's the number 1 horse in this race. But look for the royal blue silks and royal blue cap. That's who the number 1 horse is. And you'll see him coming from the far outside down the stretch to take this one down. And that's the style of racing, even though you're going the opposite direction of where we run in the United States. That's the style of closing I like to see in a turf horse. And Charlie Appleby is no joke when it comes to training turf horses. Next up is Santan, trained by Brendan Walsh. This one ran 4th in this hand shin on a very wet, sloppy dirt track. So this is going to be kind of, I guess, the dirt to turf angle, because I believe he faced Zozos in this race, who wired the field for one, so no shot there. But he ran a previous race on the dirt as well. So I went back to this Bourbon Turf Classic where he ran 5th, and he was much more forwardly placed in this race. Runs a strong race on the right hip of the leader, which I also like in the tracking type trips where you're clear on the outside and you're on the hip of the leader. But then again, he gets down the stretch leading the race and is blown away by the 5-horse. So let's go back to this Bourbon Turf Classic where he ran 5th and was more forwardly placed. He runs a really strong race on the right hip of the leader, but then he gets blown away by the 5-horse, who's also was the one I mentioned earlier, who's a hell of a strong horse on the mark. So kind of forgive that one a little bit. So this one looks okay, but I don't really like the front runners as much as I do those guys that stalk the pace and close. So up to the mark was the 5th ranked thoroughbred in the world. So that bodes well for how well that Santan ran. But the concerning thing about Santan is he doesn't seem to hold or gain down the stretch. As you can see down the stretch in this 1.25 miles, he's going to need some gas in the tank to get that done. So maybe, I don't know, staying back off the pace a little bit, different strategy, not really sure. But Set Piece is trained by Brad Cox. He's the next one. Ran 3rd in this grade 3 Wise Dan at Ellis Park. And he had previously won this grade 3 Arlington Stakes at Churchill Downs. So in the Wise Dan, he goes to the rear and waits for his chance. They hit the stretch and he mounts a solid rally to finish 3rd. I like that. He ran this very similar race at Churchill where he won. So I love turf horses that find their stride down the stretch, like I previously mentioned. So another one we're going to talk about is Atone, trained by Michael Maker. He ran 5th in this grade 3 Dinner Party Stakes, and he goes right to the lead, sets the pace through the first half mile in 47:40. he takes the lead very deep into the stretch before finally giving away. So, like I said, it's difficult for me to come up with these front running horses that seem to give way in even shorter races that we're going to have this week. So, basically, what I'm looking at on my first look is I like Set Piece and Master of the Seas that stand out on first look, but I'm not dismissing either one of those Chad Brown horses until I get a closer look. So anyway, I'll have more info later on in the week once I get past performances and all that good stuff, and we get a full list of the entries and post positions. So be on the lookout for that. And thanks again for watching. We'll have more to come, so stay tuned. See you soon.